All right, hello everyone. Good morning. It's officially 11, but I still wanted to say hi to everyone. I think we might give it a few minutes just to see if anyone else hops on before we start. So thank you all for your patience.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're really excited to have you all here today. And I just wanted to introduce our presenter, Denise Camarillo Cruz. She is from Make the Road, New York, and she is working, as you can see, on digital literacy and navigation for that organization. And we're very excited to have her because she's going to share information and insights about how to incorporate digital programming into your work. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Denise. Thank you for joining us today, everyone.
Hello, thank you, Elaine. Thank you everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to speak with you all on this topic. So let's just jump right in. Like Elaine said, my name is Denise. I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. I graduated from BU in 2021 with a degree in international relations and sociology. And during my time there, I did work at various libraries. And when I started working at these libraries, I thought I was just going to be helping people pick out books and things. But a surprisingly large component of my job was helping students find information online, navigate their course catalogs online. So there was a significant amount of like digital work to be done. And also I'm someone that grew up surrounded by technology, which is something that people like my parents and people from other generations did not experience. So I do have my fair share of like experiences helping other people navigate technology, being the IT person in your own home, as I like to say. So that's initially what kind of got me interested in digital literacy and navigation. And that's why I applied as an AmeriCorps VISTA member. I'd make the road starting in February of this year. So I've only been working here for like 3 months. But my program is sponsored by Literacy Minnesota, which is an organization based in St. Paul whose mission is to promote literacy and digital literacy to families, to children and their families. And this year was their first year starting a digital literacy cohort. So initially they were only focused on literacy, so reading and writing, but now they've started to shift their focus on digital literacy, and I'm one of the first cohorts that they've sponsored that's specifically digital literacy and is also national. So it's not only just in Minnesota, now it's there are a bunch of other AmeriCorps members working on this across the country. And for those of you who are maybe familiar with North Star digital literacy curriculum, they're also responsible for developing that information. And if you want to know more information about the VISTA program at Literacy Minnesota, thank you, Elaine, for dropping in the chat. You can find the information here. They're a wonderful resource if you are interested in starting your own digital literacy and navigation program in your own organizations. They have a bunch of resources on their site, and you can visit that link to find out more about this particular program. I think currently they don't have any digital literacy openings available, but you might have to check in regularly to see when the next one opens up. So before we get started, I kind of wanted to do this little Mentimeter. And here's the voting code. And for those of you who haven't used it before, I'm using a word cloud. So basically, if you go to this link, let me switch to that link right now, actually. So here is, let me just keep it open for here right now. I think, Elaine, if you mind dropping the Mentimeter link in the chat. So you can either go to the link that Elaine just dropped in the chat and enter the code that you see on the screen, or you can just scan it on your phone. And once you do that, a pop-up will appear with the questions, what words come to mind when you think of digital literacy? So let me type in the code really quickly, just so people can have it. So that is the code. And oh, thank you for someone who already put in their answers. So this is what you're going to see. And basically, I want to make this to see what people's gauge is on digital literacy. So the question that I have is, what words come to mind when you think of digital literacy? And you can submit answers up to 3 times, so we can have like a wider range of answers if you'd like. But this looks really good. Access, I love that. I love that's the biggest one here. I really enjoy that. Ongoing, security, etiquette, skills, typing, computers. Yeah, these are pretty much like what encompasses the work. Oh, technology. Thank you. I love these. They're always so colorful and so pretty. Again, I love the access is still in the center. Love it. So thank you for sharing this with me. I just wanted to see what people were thinking about in the conversation. I know since the pandemic started and a lot of things have moved online, digital literacy has become a much more important and hot topic in a lot of, especially education spaces, which is why we wanted to do this presentation. So I'm going to switch back to the presentation now. So before we begin any further, I also wanted to define some of the terms that we use when we talk about digital literacy. And the terms that I have here are taken from the NDIA, which is the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. They're a relatively new program or organization. And I think they started in 2019, but they're a wonderful resource for if you want to start a digital navigation program, if you want to know more about digital literacy, if you're interested in knowing more about funding, how to get digital literacy programs funded in your organization, you can check them out. Like I said, a great resource. And one of the things they have in their arsenal is like a really great glossary for definitions that people can access. So what I have here is a definition for digital literacy. And digital literacy is the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, communicate info that require both technical and cognitive skills. So what does this mean? Being able to send emails, being able to use your computer enough, know how to use a browser to be able to send an email, things like this. So people are able to communicate with their loved ones, their family, employers, etc. And the second term that I have for you all is digital equity, which is a state where individuals and communities can fully participate in society, democracy, and economy using tools from information technology. And tools, IT technology tools include computers, phones, Wi-Fi, etc. So everything that encompasses that. And essentially, this is really important because, as you know, a lot of things like voter registrations, being able to register for SNAP benefits, all of these things have moved online. Even things for like getting an appointment at the DMV, they all require some element of digital literacy. And in order to achieve digital equity, our community members and people need to have the skills needed to do these things in order to get access to food, get access to an ID, be able to vote, etc. And the last definition that I have for you all is digital inclusion, which is the state when individuals and communities have or can access things like affordable home and broadband and Wi-Fi, appropriate tech devices. And I mention appropriate because some tech devices are better to use in certain situations than others. When things moved online, a lot of our English as a second language courses moved online, and most of our students only use their cell phones. In reality, it's much better to attend the class on your computer because you can do more things on the computer. So that is an example of appropriate tech devices. Digital literacy skills, so the ability to like navigate websites and know how to find information, tech support, applications they need to engage in society, so things like emails, web browsers. So being able to do all of these things are really important to achieve digital equity. And usually you'd have a digital navigator that would help someone be able to do all of the, or access all of the elements of digital inclusion. So that kind of brings us to why Make the Road started the VISTA grant. We wanted to achieve all of these previous goals within our own community. So that's why they applied and received the VISTA grant. We're currently in the first year of our program, so I am the first member to do this, and my term is for a year. So we're in the first year of the program with myself. And the overarching goals of the program at Make the Road are to expand digital literacy tutoring for Make the Road's current students. We already have digital literacy programming, but we want to expand to reach more people, which is the second goal. So people outside of our adult literacy classes or ESOL classes. We also want to build a digital navigation program within Make the Road. And we want to do this by developing resources, things like coaching tools and volunteer structures. So even after my service ends and someone else takes over after me, that they have some pre-existing structures that will help them achieve the goals of Make the Road. So our goal is that in 3 to 5 years, the project will be successful and we're able to have digital literacy tutoring and programming to our low-income community members so they can easily work, live, and go to school in an increasingly digital world. So we want to improve people's quality of life by giving them access to digital literacy and programming. And then lastly, we also want to help our members access affordable broadband, tech devices, literacy skill training, and tech support. So these are the overarching goals of the program. Sorry, quick water break. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the organization itself, Make the Road. Here is a photo of our website. Make the Road New York is a grassroots organization. It's a community-based organization, and we mainly serve working class immigrant communities in New York City and beyond. The majority of our community members are Spanish speaking, so we do have to keep that in mind when we're planning our digital literacy programming. And I guess more about Make the Road. We have offices in the greater tri-state area, which include an office in Westchester, Long Island, Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. And we also have sister organizations in the following states: in Nevada, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So there are different aspects of Make the Road. There's a legal one where we have lobbyists that try to lobby for pro-immigrant legislation at the state and federal level. And we also have more grassroots community-based services. So things like ESOL classes, which in Make the Road stands for English for Speakers of Other Languages. So English classes, civics classes for students who want to take their citizenship exam, food handling, certification programs, a community health program for members of our community. And since the pandemic started, we also have something called Bike Brigade, where community members can get food delivered to their homes by our volunteers, and also Community Pantry, which all started during the pandemic. So before the VISTA program, this is kind of the scope of what Make the Road's digital literacy programming was. We did provide digital literacy support for adult students starting in 2013. Things like workshops where we taught our community members how to use their laptops. And also we tried to integrate laptops into our ESOL classes with the help of volunteers. We have health job training programs, like I mentioned earlier, where volunteers support tech integration. So how to use a computer in addition to also having health job training. And in the past, we also ran a workshop in partnership with LAC, which stands for the Literacy Assistance Center. They have, I believe, another presentation during this conference, so you should check out, hosted by Nell. She's great. And we worked with them to help register students for Gmail accounts, because that's also super important now. I think if you have a Gmail account, you can access so many different other services. So we wanted to make sure that our community members were equipped with that. And here are some photos of our past courses. I believe these were taken in 2015, so pre-pandemic. We have students on computers and tablets. Yes, okay, next. So when COVID hit, a lot of things had to change radically, and I assume it's the same for all of your programs. Suddenly, our classes all had to go from in-person to remote. And we learned a lot of things when this happened. Generally, students really liked the option to have classes online. It offered them a lot of flexibility. They can take classes from the comfort of their own home, or sometimes like they have time during their commute to take their class, which is something that was not available to them before. And we also learned, however, that there was a huge barrier for a lot of people. When we moved online, a lot of our classes, well, all of our classes moved on to Zoom. And not all of our students knew how to use applications like Zoom, and the ones I have listed here, Google Classroom, WhatsApp, and Google Drive, that our students and our teachers would use for their courses. So in order to meet this demand, we started tutoring sessions, which were one-on-one tech appointments, as we call them, that paired up a student with a volunteer, and the volunteer would then teach the student how to use applications like Zoom and WhatsApp, so they're able to fully participate in their courses. And through this process, teachers also became interested in using education tools for their classes. And as a result, the digital literacy team at the time offered like workshops and programming on how to use some of the apps that we have here. We have Flipgrid, ESL Library, Nearpod, the little robot is Wokaroo, Padlet, Google Classroom, and ISL Collective. I'm assuming some of you may have also used these programs in your classes, but there is a digital component that we at Make the Road, our digital literacy team, helps teachers and students how to use these apps. So we learned that these apps help students and teachers manage the classes more effectively. The digital literacy team is currently planning workshops to teach students and teachers how to use these tools. So additional programming for our teachers. ESL Library is amazing. Yes, that's great. I know a lot of our teachers have really great things to say about ESL Library. I can talk about that in a little bit, or actually right now. Let's see, what's next? Oh, right. So in addition to what we learned, in addition to like what we learned about teachers and how to move our classes online, we also learned about a lot of our students' needs outside of the classroom. We learned that students, also have hurdles in technology And they wanted to learn how to use apps to communicate needs and share information with case managers. At Make the Road, in addition to providing ESL classes, we also provide case managers that kind of assist students with their basic needs. And also, students want to learn how to use apps to make life easier for them. Things like telehealth apps, things like My Chart. I know my mom also constantly comes to me to ask how to use My Chart because all of her information is on there and she didn't know how to use it. She does now, but that was like a huge hurdle that I know a lot of our community members still face. Things like job hunting online is also something that requires digital literacy skills that we needed to provide our students with. Let's see, next. Okay, and this is kind of where the good stuff starts. This is the beginning of the VISTA program. As I mentioned before, there was a need that we saw from our students that they needed digital literacy help outside of their ESOL classes. And previously, we'd only been helping students one-on-one. So there was a clear need to us that showed that students needed support outside of this, and we needed to have more robust programming for students in place instead of just one-on-one help. One-on-one help is great, but our scope to help people is quite limited. So this is why we introduced the VISTA program. Okay. So when I started and we started to build more curriculum for digital literacy, we had to take a pause and think about what needs our community had before we started to build the program. We needed to focus on what skills we're trying to instill into our community, what skills actually matter to our community members that would actually make their lives easier. Some things that we found through talking with teachers, through speaking with students and helping them is that many of them are only on smartphones. That's the only computing device that they have in their homes. So how do we navigate, or how do we help them navigate the world using our smartphone? Because we know that sometimes there are barriers to buying computers. Computers are not cheap most of the time. So we have to meet our students where they are. Many of our community members are also Spanish speakers or are learning English as an additional language. So they also have to navigate a bilingual world. So we also need to make programming that is conscious of that and having material translated into Spanish when needed. Many of our students also have children. A lot of them are older adults who attend their own classes and Make the Road, and also have to help their own children attend school online. Also, when the pandemic started, a lot of children found themselves learning online exclusively. And how was that for them? We also learned that many of our teachers, or excuse me, many of our community members and our students needed training so they can attend their ESOL classes and Make the Road, like I mentioned earlier. We did have one-on-one programming for them, but how else can we support them? And they also needed tools to help practice their English skills online. It would be wonderful if we can get all our students learning how to use things like Flipgrid and Nearpod so they can practice their skills outside of the classroom, so we can really reinforce their ESL learning at Make the Road. And how are we going to get a grasp of what our students need? We were able to meet with students one-on-one whenever they needed specific help. But we also wanted to get feedback from the rest of our ESOL community. So this includes teachers. We recently started a survey where we surveyed our ESOL teachers, and we wanted to ask them about their digital literacy needs and their desires for their students. So what programs do they want to learn how to use so they're able to better teach their students online? What skills do they want to instill in their students when it comes to digital literacy? What actually matters? So what we found is that there are a bunch of teachers that were really interested in this specific initiative. And we also found out which apps they wanted to use. And I'm glad that someone in the chat mentioned ESL Library. Amy, thank you, because that was super popular amongst our teachers. And another thing that this survey also helped was that teachers started talking amongst themselves about what apps that they use. So there's better communication within the ESOL department about what skills work, what apps don't, et cetera, et cetera. And another benefit of this survey was that we were able to figure out which teachers were really leaders and were really championing integrating digital literacy skills. So in the future, they can become leader teachers that can set examples for their peers. And here we have an example of a question that we had in our survey. And the question that we asked, what skills would you like to develop yourself to help to help navigate teaching in a digital world better? So a couple of people were interested in learning about Flipgrid and Nearpod. I know that was particularly popular. Knowing how to use Google Classroom was also popular. Flipgrid, Kahoot, other ones as well. And other basic skills that they wanted to help teach their students. For example, someone wanted to help students know how to perform internet searches and research, because that's also a key component of digital literacy. How do we build resilience within our community members? We can teach them how to use a computer, but if they need help, do they know where to go to or what to search? Yes, so this was the teacher survey. And in addition to the teacher survey, we also provide our teachers additional one-on-one support. In the past, we've provided demos on how to use apps like Google Survey and Google Classroom. We also go into classes that the teachers request to teach students how to use apps for their class and for their own lives. I know a couple weeks ago, I helped a teacher, I went into her classroom and I taught her students how to use WhatsApp on the web, because it's much easier to use WhatsApp on the web or on their tablet. It provides more flexibility so they don't have to constantly switch between apps. And WhatsApp, has use outside of their ESOL classroom. That's how they can communicate with their loved ones back home and here in the US. So a lot of these skills are transferable not only to ESOL classes, but also to their lives at whole. We've also been meeting with teachers and staying in contact with them. So we can stay up to date with their needs. I also have meetings with teachers quite frequently about these sort of things. So we always know if their needs shift or if they're interested in using another program, for example, in their classrooms. And like I mentioned earlier, some teachers are very enthusiastic about integrating digital literacy tools into their lessons and unit planning. And we also had some ideas of how to do that within their curriculum. For example, when you're teaching a course on health, would it be beneficial to teach students how to use telehealth portals? Because a lot of telehealth portals are in English, so this provides like English practice, and it also applies to like real world situations where sometimes a lot of your health results get sent to like an app and you have to look at them or rely on a professional doctor to translate that for you. So a lot of these have real world, it translates into the real world. Also, when learning about transportation, teaching students how to use the MTA apps, how to use the Omni apps, which is a new service that started in New York City, I think, a couple years ago. It's also like an app on your phone that you can use, but that also requires digital literacy to be able to know how to use. So we want to make sure that in addition to getting ESOL education, we want to make sure that our students have like digital skills so they can use them in the real world. Okay, next. So here is additional stuff that we learned from our surveys. We're currently in the process of giving out a student survey to accompany the teacher survey. We're going to give it out next week and the week after. So this is specifically for students. We're going to survey all of our ESOL students, and we want to figure out what their strengths are, what they already know how to do, what their needs are, and their interests. So we're sending out 2 surveys, one of which is just to determine how tech savvy they are. Do they know how to use a computer? Do they know how to use their phones? Do they know how to search the internet? Do they know how to use email? And then the second survey that we're giving out is going to be an interest survey, where we ask our students, like, what are you interested in learning about? What apps, what daily life or life management apps are you interested in learning about? And on the right, we have an example of a question we're asking. So choose the things that you want to do with your phone or computer. And here we have some examples of like finding events and places in my community. The first one with make my phone and computer easier to see, hear, read, and use. That's essentially asking students if they want to know how to use accessibility tools on their phones. A lot of times those are hard to access if you don't know how to navigate your phone. Things like knowing how to use Gmail, telehealth apps, etc. And what are we going to do with this, with the survey answers? We're going to use this information so we know what students want to learn about, so we can plan future programming appropriately. And so we can plan workshops and class curriculum for our students in addition to ESOL classes. Oh, we have a question. Oh, can we get a copy of the survey? Or can our students be part of your surveying? Can we share our surveys? Okay. I'm going to ask. I helped write the survey, but my supervisor is a person who is the one who actually went and wrote it and translated it. I can speak with them about some of the questions that we gave out and see if we can send it out to you through an email or something. I'll ask about it because I know like a lot of people are interested in this, because our survey is kind of specifically tailored to Make the Road, because we have questions about like what classes are you taking, etc. But I will ask. I know this is something that a lot of people are interested in, but I did provide some of the example questions here. So basically, it's also based upon what your community needs are. For example, we're serving an immigrant community, so we have to make sure that we're answering or asking questions about like, do you want things in your language? Are things like using WhatsApp? I know some immigrant communities are really reliant on WhatsApp, whereas people who don't fall in the immigrant community may not use it on a daily basis. Oh, thank you. I will let my supervisor know because they did all of the graphics. They're so good at it. It looks so pretty. Thank you. We appreciate it. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, when you're making your own survey, if you want to do this for your own students, also just keep in mind like the demographics that you're serving, what apps might be relevant to them. Like I mentioned the WhatsApp one. WhatsApp is huge in immigrant communities, but like when I went to college, no one used WhatsApp because they were all from the US, and the only people that used it were like international students. So that's like an example of like knowing your demographics and knowing what apps are relevant to them. So yeah, I'll ask about the survey questions, definitely. Okay, let's see, where were we? Next. Okay, and then another aspect of the program that we're currently building is also how to enter in partnerships and coalitions. One of the benefits, sorry, my voice is very dry. Thank you. Okay, so one of the benefits of entering a coalition or a partnership is that there is strength in numbers. When you start a coalition, it's easier to get funding, like I said, strength in numbers, and it's easier to share resources with others. And I know that I was in a meeting yesterday with people who received a grant for a coalition, and members of the coalition were all focused on different things. One organization that made up the coalition was focused on getting tech devices to people. Another organization that made up the coalition was focused on just digital literacy training. So because you have a diverse amount of like skill sets within digital literacy and digital equity, it is beneficial for you to join a coalition because you have access to like a different number of resources and different perspectives. So you can share resources much easier that way. So Make the Road has worked with the NDIA, like I mentioned earlier, which is the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, the Literacy Assistance Center, the New York State Library, and Hispanic Federation. So those are the organizations that we work with and have contacts with, and maybe may consider like applying for funding in the future. I highly recommend these organizations as resources. A lot of these organizations have been in this digital literacy fight for a very long time. So they have a lot of expertise in the fields of digital literacy and adult education as well. I know LAC and NDIA are great. The New York State Library, they host a lot of webinars regarding digital navigation and digital literacy. Hispanic Federation is also super important, particularly to Make the Road, because they're also like a Spanish-speaking immigrant-based organization. So a lot of our needs and our goals are overlap with them. So also when you're working with coalition building and partnerships, just to keep that in mind as well. Sometimes a lot of organizations serve different communities, so you also have to keep in mind like your community's needs as well. Okay, let's see, next slide. So the next steps for our program include digital navigation. So I mentioned that all the way in the beginning. Like I said, this is still the first year of the VISTA program. I've only been here for 3 months. So this is something that we're still trying to kind of get a grasp on. But digital navigation services include ongoing assistance with affordable internet access, device acquisition, technical skills, and application support. And I guess to add on to this definition, you might have also seen the word digital navigator floating around. And a digital navigator is a person, usually a staff person at an organization that helps clients or community members access these exact services. So internet access, device acquisition, technical skills, application support. So things like access to high-speed broadband and high-speed internet, access to computers and other tools in addition to teaching students how to use them. So this is something that is still quite new to Make the Road. Our staff is still pretty small, but we're hoping to build it over the course of this VISTA program for the next 3 to 5 years. And currently we're focused on digital literacy curriculum, but we do want to work on expanding Make the Road New York services outside of digital literacy and our workshops and classes. But this is something that we need to keep in mind. There are a bunch of organizations as well that work within digital navigation. Like I said, if you want to start your own digital navigation program at your organization, the NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, has like a great handbook for people who want to get involved in this work. Or if you're just interested in it and want to know what it's about, they're a great resource. So next thing I want to talk about is like the resources and the capacity that allows Make the Road New York to have this program and have the VISTA program. So our resources do allow us the opportunity to create capacity for the navigation and digital literacy program. One core aspect of this is our volunteers. So we do have a large number of volunteers that make this possible for Make the Road. When I mentioned our one-on-one tech appointments, those are held by our volunteers that we recruit from our base. So we usually recruit these volunteers from our own community. We also recruit them from various online platforms. We currently use New York City Service as one, and Volunteer Match, and also our own form on our own website. So that's kind of where we've been getting like the capacity to expand our digital literacy resources, in addition to myself being hired and the program being implemented at Make the Road. So we do have a digital literacy team, which includes myself, my supervisor, and another AmeriCorps member who helps occasionally. And we're kind of the ones responsible for helping gathering info and making programming. We know that some other organizations might not have this capacity. Who manages our volunteers? Oh, so we do have, my supervisor kind of wears two hats. They are the volunteer manager and coordinator, and they also work with digital literacy and programming, and I do as well. So I help with managing specifically our digital literacy volunteers. My supervisor, they help with volunteers overall. And we also have 2 additional AmeriCorps members that help with volunteer recruitment and onboarding. I do that as well, but I specifically work with our digital literacy volunteers. So that's what I mean by the digital literacy team. So not only do I help with making programming along with my supervisor, but we also help with volunteer recruitment and management. So I guess to say we do have like someone who does both jobs. So it is a bit easier in that respect. But if your organization doesn't have like digital navigators or someone who does volunteer recruitment, some organizations have case managers and sometimes teachers themselves that can assist with this, with helping make programming. I know some teachers are very engaged in this, and they want to implement digital literacy programming into their ESOL work. So that's another way that you can do this yourself if you don't have a digital literacy team. And like I mentioned, I also included a link to the AmeriCorps VISTA program at Literacy Minnesota, where you could potentially get one of me, someone who, with my role, that can help you with this as well. Did someone need the link? Oh, yes, I have created YouTube training videos. Thank you for mentioning that, Edna. We do have like, oh, sorry, click the wrong thing. We do have like a little like YouTube website, or like a channel, there we go, that's the word, where we do post like small tutorials in English and Spanish for our students. So for example, if we're not able to help, students one-on-one, we can just say, okay, the teacher can email us and say, hey, can you run a tutorial for my students on how to use Google Docs? So we can go into that teacher's classroom. We can run a little demo where we share a screen, we teach students how to use Google Docs. And in addition to that, we also like film little tutorial videos on our phones, because usually that's how our students are using Google Docs on their phones. And we film a little tutorial on how to, like, I don't know, edit a Word document or edit a Google Doc, and then we upload it to the YouTube channel. Yeah, that's also kind of one of the ways that we're building capacity. So when I'm gone, there's still materials available that I helped create or that my supervisor helped create that students can use in the future, so we're not repeating the work. So that's also what we mean by building capacity within the program. So, if anyone, for example, like an ESL teacher or ESOL teacher at a program can just go to the channel and see, okay, does Denise have a video on how to, I don't know, make graphics in Google Slides or making transitions? Maybe, and they can see, okay, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. They can reach out to me, or if they have a video already available, they can just click on it and watch it and share it with their students. And we also have it in English and Spanish, so our students are able to follow along. Yeah, and that material exists forever, and it's there for whatever Make the Road New York member wants to use it. Okay, and then where was I? Let's see. Oh, right. So I said that if you don't have a digital literacy team, but you still want to incorporate digital literacy programming into your classes, you can also ask case managers to do this or have teachers integrate it directly into their curriculum. There's no right way to do this. This is just how we do it because we're able to have the resources within our community, our volunteers, and like some of the grants that we've been given. And I guess in addition to that, we also want to help build capacity for our students. We want to give our community members the tools needed for them to teach others, right? So, if we help one student with how to navigate the internet or how to use a browser, they can teach someone else who maybe isn't enrolled at Make the Road or affiliated with us at all. We want to make sure that our students become teachers and leaders within their own community. So that's also another example of building capacity. We want to make sure that our students have the skills to teach as well. And that's something super important for our community as well. We want to make sure that we build resiliency within our community. And that's another term that I guess I could define, digital resiliency, which is essentially kind of what it sounds like. So if students don't know where to find information, they know how to Google things. They know how to search things up on YouTube or how to look up tutorials. And teach other people how to do it. So that's another example of what we want to build and Make the Road. So with everything that I just said, we did have like program principles that we did make that we kind of wrote out here. And these are principles that we kind of say to ourselves in order to ground ourselves and understand why we're doing the work that we're doing, and for us to be self-aware of our own needs and our community's needs. So the first thing is we are a community-based organization. We are a social justice organization. So we want to recognize that when we're building our digital literacy programming. We want to recognize that our community has a wealth of knowledge and that everyone possesses digital literacy skills in one form or another. Most people have a phone. Most people are able to like send messages or use WhatsApp. That is in and of itself is like digital literacy. They're able to do messaging and use apps to a small capacity. We want to acknowledge those skills that our community members have so we can build on it. Also, something that I mentioned was assessment, research, and feedback gathering. We want to gather information and research on our community's needs and also help our community members envision their own potential. So one of the reasons we're also assessing our community and our students is so we know what they want to learn, because we're here to serve them. Their needs come before anything else. We want to make sure that they're prepared to navigate this digital world by themselves or with help from us. So we have to keep that in mind whenever we do assessment and research. We have to realize who we're doing it for and why we're doing it. And then lastly, program implementation. We're conscious of the limitations of our physical spaces in our community. We have currently, I mostly work with the Queens and the Brooklyn offices that Make the Road, and they're quite small, and we're in the process of moving. So the ability for us to hold like classes in person is currently like, you know, it's very cramped. So we have to be conscious of that. This is kind of specific to Make the Road, making sure that we know how much space we have and how many people we can help. But we do want to work from a place of abundance by recognizing and honoring the power and creativity and adaptability of our community members. So even though we have little to work with, we can still make it work. We can still make it happen. We can still have programming online and give our students the tools to be able to participate. So that's another thing that we are conscious of. And I guess we're nearing the end of the presentation. And I kind of wanted to go over why we wanted to present at this conference with all of you. Once again, I'm very happy to be here and speaking with you all. Some of the connections that we wanted to make. We wanted to connect with potential volunteers who are student teachers or are interested in learning more about adult education as it relates to digital literacy. How can we be a resource to other people the way that other organizations have been resources to us and have helped us? We also want to connect with individuals who are interested in implementing some of the tools that we're collaborating on, that we're working on, things like surveys, things like, you know, how good is a broadband connection in your community? Are most of your community members connected with broadband? What are you doing about that, etc.? How do we collaborate on making sure community is connected? And we also want to connect with other other community organizations that are interested in developing their own digital literacy programming. Are there other organizations out there, maybe that you're members of, that want to build digital literacy programs within your own organizations? And how are you doing it? What does your community look like? Is there anything, are there any similarities so we can help each other? And I guess lastly, we also want to integrate digital literacy curriculum deeper into our teachers' planning. So I know this conference is for adult education, so hopefully we can start like, you know, planting the seed of perhaps introducing digital literacy curriculum into your own classes sometime in the future, because it is something that is becoming more and more relevant in our digital world, especially since the pandemic. Like I mentioned, it kind of accelerated that process where suddenly a lot of services moved online. And how are we as people who work in adult education helping accommodate our students to these like changing factors? So yes, let's see. So just to recap, we talked about the VISTA program, assessments and surveys that we're trying to implement and Make the Road. How do we support our community members through our programming, digital navigation and how case management support can be beneficial, how we build capacity within our own organization, and how we help build coalitions and form relationships with other organizations who are doing the same work that we are. And lastly, we also talked about funding. A lot of the organizations that I mentioned earlier have funding opportunities. For example, the NDIA currently has a digital innovation grant open for people who want to apply. That's something that is an opportunity for funding. We're living in a very exciting time for digital literacy and digital navigation overall, because suddenly the government is interested and they're willing to put money into digital navigation and funding for the first time in a while. So there are opportunities out there, but I just want to highlight the NDIA and a couple other organizations that might also have either funding opportunities themselves or are working to get funding. So let's see. Okay. Oh, yes. How did I get involved in this work? I got, oh, I guess I went over that in the beginning. I've always been interested in digital navigation. I wanted to become a librarian, actually. And I learned that a huge aspect of being a librarian is being a digital navigator and helping people build digital literacy skills. And that was something that I was really interested in from the start. And I previously volunteered at Make the Road starting in September of 2021. And just as helping people actually apply for the EWF fund, which is the Excluded Workers Fund, which is basically a fund that New York State had for people who, I think it was New York State or New York City. I think it was New York State, for people who weren't eligible for what was it, for the stimulus checks. So that was like a fund that people had to apply to online in order to get that money if they didn't get a stimulus check. And that's kind of where I got started, because I had to walk people through the application process online. And that's kind of where it dawned on me that, okay, this might be a bigger issue than I thought. Like, we need to get our community invested and access these funds like this and surveys like this online. So that's kind of why I got involved in this work and why I thought it was important. And when that job opportunity at Make the Road popped up, I was like, I'm interested. I want to know how I can help my community access things online. So thank you for that question, Edna. The new literacy. Yes, exactly. Thank you. So this is the Q&A portion. If anyone has any questions, or yeah, I'm just gonna, let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, but thank you all for being here. If you have any questions, please let me know. We're gonna have this little space here where anyone can ask questions and I can answer. If not, we can end early. I know it's quite a day.
I think, Denise, I mean, I think I would really love for my program to work and benefit from what you're doing. So, I mean, maybe let me just know what the best way or how you might work with other programs, or how I can learn, even if it's just resources, or even just maybe sharing the slide or something. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Can I get your email? If anyone wants information, they can just put your email in the chat and I'll write it down. I can see, like I said, I can see if I can ask my manager or supervisor about sharing slides and resources. Thank you. So if anyone wants to drop their email in the chat, I'm happy to help. We're still in the process of like coalition building, but we want to help other organizations in whatever way we can. Thank you. And we're actually giving out this survey to our students next week. So I think once that's done, I can ask how we can share the slides or some of the resources that we used to help have some of the questions, or how we got some of the questions and how we came up with them. Okay. All right, let me just copy down all your emails. Who does most of your funding? So the VISTA grant was a grant that Make the Road applied for. That's how I got this position. So that's one of the ways that we got a grant. I think we might have shared a link in the beginning. That's something that you can apply for. We also have grants through the WIOA. I think most of you might have that through adult education. We're currently trying to apply for the NDIA, New York Digital Inclusion Fund. So that's another way that we're trying to get funding, to be totally transparent about that. Yeah, so those I think are the two main streams of like funding that we want to get. Like I said, this program is still relatively new. I only started 3 months ago, so we're slowly building. We're trying to get there, but yeah, just to be transparent, that's kind of where we get like our funding. The VISTA program was definitely like the big one for here. Oh, thank you, Elaine, for sharing. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm still copying your emails. Digital literacy does not help with copying things faster. Okay. And oh, thank you for sharing the link again. So yeah, I'll see what we can share, or at least the resources that we used in order to build our surveys. But then again, I do recommend, like, if you all work in ESOL or English as a second language or third language or whatever it may be, communicate with your teachers about what they need, or at least talk to them about digital literacy. I know it's a new concept for a lot of people, but once they get it, they become interested and they're like, okay, how do we move to implement a lot of those programming curriculum into our own ESOL classes? Okay, anyone else?
Quick question. we have some kind of like digital literacy courses and also utilize YouTube videos to kind of help our clients have access to that when they're not with us. As you know, like digital literacy is one of those things, like you have to kind of integrate it, continuously use it. It's not like you can just like practice it for an hour and then like you have mastered that skill. Have you found anything helpful to help kind of keep that practice going with your students in classrooms? I know like, a big part's integrating it into the coursework, but things to help encourage them once they're out of your classroom.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we started doing is like, we're currently trying to build digital literacy classes. So courses that last more than a couple of hours. So like maybe things that last over 6 weeks. But another thing that we've done, for example, I had a tutorial on how to change your name in Zoom. And we did that for our student leadership school, which is basically run by one of our organizers to teach students how to like organize themselves politically. And I popped in the first 15 minutes of class. I'm like, hey, this is how you change your Zoom name, how to add your pronouns, etc. And then I left them with like a diagram of how to do it. And then the person who taught that course showed that diagram the first 10 minutes of class for like, I think the next 4 or 5 weeks. So their students are able to practice those skills and are able to integrate it. So just like repetition is huge, because I know a lot of people, they tend to forget things very quickly. I do as well. I need to constantly have things repeated. So just repeating material, reviewing material constantly, so it's always fresh in people's brains. Asking them to repeat whatever digital literacy skill they just went over maybe a week ago or something like that, and making sure that you're able to like reintegrate those skills throughout your course. But yeah, that was kind of one of the issues we had, because we're only doing one-on-one appointments that were need-based. So whenever they needed it, they'd come, but a lot of people like fell through the cracks because they weren't practicing, or because we were only able to help them like once and then just kind of let them go on their own. So that's kind of why we wanted to have more programming that was more consistent and like change the way that we implement digital literacy skills into our classes. And thank you for your question. Oh, there's a question in the chat. I can't change my name in the Zoom. Oh no. It should be the 3 dots and it says rename next to your name.
I just changed it
right now. Oh, great. We're doing it right now. Digital literacy. If you go to your name, Ihuba, where it says next to mute, there's like 3 dots. You scroll down at the bottom, it should say rename. That should be for on desktop. On your phone.
It was not available on the 3 dots. I usually do that, but this time I couldn't do it.
Maybe it's because we're in a conference. I'm not sure. Elaine, who knows? It's fine. Maybe come to one of our courses. Maybe we can teach you. But yeah. Anything else? Sorry about that. Any other questions?
Well, I did suggest to Noah, if you want to keep up with all these changes and, speak to other people who are working on these issues, the NYCAL Digital Literacy Group is a great venue for that. It's really working out beautifully now.
Elaine, she helps host it. She's here helping me host. Thank you again, Elaine. If you want to give information on that. I also attend those meetings. They're great. I recommend them.
Yes, several of us. So Noah and Ahuva and Denise, we were all together yesterday. So NYCAL, the New York City Coalition for Adult Literacy, has started meeting. We try to meet monthly, and it's kind of broad, but we're really working towards sharing resources around exactly what Denise was talking about today. So digital equity and digital inclusion. I'm trying to think of the easiest way to share. I can share my email if you'd like to be included in our kind of meeting invitations and announcements. We're happy to do that. We have a listserv related to this theme. Denise, were you gonna?
Sorry, let me put my email in the chat. I realized that should have been a lot easier. Yeah, you can put your email in the chat too, Elaine. Thank you. Sorry, you just reminded me.
Separate than the like regular NYCAL meetings?
Separate to those meetings. So we kind of meet between to do a little more intensive work. So yesterday, like what Denise was mentioning, we talked about terms, we talked about funding, and then we talked a lot about kind of identifying the skills, what are the frameworks that are already out there related to these skills, and what do the different frameworks have, and are there curricula already? So NYCAL has a page on our website that we're listing resources, and then also we send things around. But like I said, let me put my email in, and however we can help you, just let us know. We can add you to listservs, we can direct you to the website. I'll put both the website and my email.
Also, I think it's a crucial time right now to be in a network, because it seems like things are just zooming along in terms of funding and accessibility to all of these coalitions and networks.
Yeah, I really recommend that NYCAL, attending meetings as well, because you talk about things like funding, and also just like the NYCAL website as a resource for these things. Really, really great work. Love them.
We really like having Denise because she's doing the work in the community. So it's really great to hear from her. So Denise, thank you for joining us, and thank you so much for today, for everything that you shared.
Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. It's the first time I'm doing a conference like this. So I was like, but thank you. It's been
did
lovely.
a beautiful job. Beautiful. Excellent.
Thank you. Okay, are there any more questions, or I don't know, do people want to leave early? Relax? I don't know. Eat a snack, another snack.
It's lunchtime. Now it's
Oh,
lunchtime.
great. Okay, go have lunch, everyone, if there's no more questions.
I think, can you give us the YouTube link
Oh.
for the training?
Let me see if I can find it. I definitely I didn't even think of that. Thank you for reminding me. I'll send it right now if I can. Praying I'm logged in. It's strange because we've been using some of our videos are private, but we're going to be posting stuff relatively soon, hopefully. Oh, slow down speaking. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm from Brooklyn. I speak so fast. So sorry. I'll do my best to slow down next time. All right. Is that everything? Okay, great. Thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful to speak with you. I'll speak to my supervisor about the survey things and where we got our information from, where we pulled our questions from, etc. So thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.